Hmm. So, a little bit of advice, children. Never eat this cereal for breakfast. It's tasty, but it's so unhealthy that it'll give you acid reflux immediately after the first bite. But it's so good that you can't stop yourself, and you can feel the fat building within you with every spoonful. And then you just not want to film any videos because it just don't feel like it. Uh, and it's even worse because this might be a long one. So, hello everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of French Toast Crunch. The Green Inferno, Eli Roth's newest film that is a throwback to the Italian cannibal genre, which was popular in the late 70s, early 80s, but is more or less extinct now. So, man, this is going to be a tough one because God, there's just so much I could say, and I don't want to spend the next 40 minutes rambling about the Green Inferno or French Toast Crunch. So, there are a few things you need to understand before I start talking about the Green Inferno. The first is, I'm not a big Eli Roth fan. I don't hate the guy either. I know that he has a very polarizing reputation amongst horror fans. In my opinion, he does have talent, a certain amount of skill in crafting individual scenes, but he sucks when it comes to the narrative as a whole. And I'll explain why throughout the duration of this video. But what's worse is he doesn't seem to be getting better. And I think the main problem is a lack of experience. Maybe he's just too egotistical to really listen to any of the criticisms directed towards his works. And if you need to know, I did not like Cabin Fever. I actually thought Hostel was pretty good. I know it's not a very popular film these days. It's weird how when that was first released, I actually didn't like it because I thought people were overrating it so much. And over time, it's like people have begun to realize that Hostel wasn't that good. So there's been that real intense backlash, and now I feel like I'm kinder to that movie than anybody else's. But I do believe that it's his best film. And Hostel 2, it was just average, but Hostel 2 revealed that Eli Roth had a poor attitude. When that film underperformed at the box office, he pretty much threw a temper tantrum and rage quit directing until now, 7 years later. And I hated how he worded this too, because he said something along the lines of, if you better get your friends to go see the movie, because if it doesn't do well, then you probably won't see me for a while. And that just tells me that he has a very sensitive ego, and he could not get over the fact that he had directed or he had made a film that people weren't flocking to. I could be wrong. It's just how I interpreted his actions. And he's one of those guys, he needs the experience. He needs to keep making movies so he can improve on his strengths while overcoming his weaknesses. He's not a natural talent, or he's not he's not Quentin Tarantino, who could take off that much time and that will make his projects even better. In fact, when Tarantino makes them too quickly, that's when they aren't quite as good. But Eli Roth just doesn't have that natural ability. You should also know that I am not the biggest fan of the genre, the Italian cannibal flick. I have seen quite a few of them. I've seen Jungle Holocaust, Cannibal Holocaust, Zombie Holocaust, which, yes, is just another cannibal flick, albeit not of the undead variety, despite what you'd think based on the name. Eaten Alive, Cannibal Ferox, Cut and Run. I may have seen one or two others, but I just don't really like any of them too much. I'd say the best is Jungle Holocaust, but even then, that's more of a survival horror flick that just happens to deal with cannibals and just happens to be just as graphic as the others. Cannibal Holocaust is the film that sort of jump-started this genre. It's the one that all of the imitators followed. And I just don't like the formula too much. To me, it meanders to where there's so much filler. Nothing seems to be happening, but I will concede that Cannibal Holocaust is at least more artfully made than its imitators. Uh, it does have a certain kind of atmosphere that I could totally understand why people respect this movie so much. And plus, the gore effects are phenomenal. Um, so I won't say that it's a bad movie. It's just not a movie I like. And then, of course, you have the animal cruelty, um, which unfortunately appears in most of these films, and that always makes them uncomfortable to watch for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. But most of the imitators are just trashy. They're not artfully made at all. I always heard that Cannibal Ferox was kind of entertaining, but I personally thought it was like one or two really good scenes within a sea of tedium. So obviously, the Green Inferno is not my cup of tea. But I will say this: I was kind of eager in seeing it because, at the absolute least, it is the only of its kind that's been released in theaters for God knows how many years. At least it wasn't found footage or paranormal related, so it does stand out amongst the crowd as of 2015. And I always like when filmmakers try something different, something that goes completely against modern day trends. So I saw the movie, and it's not very good. I didn't think it was, well, it's not a good movie, but I also didn't think it was a very effective horror flick. And even worse, I didn't even think it really pulled off the Italian cannibal throwback very well. In some ways, I'd say it's his weakest film, but it also didn't annoy me as much as Cabin Fever did. So I'm a little conflicted there. However, I also want to make it clear that I did not hate this movie. For the most part, I was just indifferent to it. When I was first writing my review, I was going to rate it a 2 out of 4 stars. But I was looking over my content, and it occurred to me that almost everything I said was negative, and the positive attributes I just sort of gave a passing mention to. And so I ended up lowering the rating because of that. So let's start with what I thought the movie did well. It definitely has an interesting visual style. I love the use of color. Green, red, yellow, black. The colors were very eye-popping, and they contrasted off of each other very nicely. Now you could make an argument that it sort of contradicts one of the main selling points of the Italian cannibal flicks, where it's a lot grittier and dirtier and almost ugly to behold, because the whole point is it's drawing you into its location and making you desperately want out. That's just part of how those films built up their atmosphere. But that's sort of undermined here, where everything is very gorgeous and nice to look at. Yeah, you could make the argument either way. I do agree that it is a problem, but at the same time, at least it's a problem where there is some silver lining. I will admit that it's one of the only bright spots, because the Green Inferno fucks up so much that I was willing to embrace it, even though you could, once again, make this argument that it is also a flaw. The villagers, they looked very creepy. I loved the costume design, the bone piercings, and the body paint. You at least, even if you don't like how this film seems to want to be it wants to be eye candy, it does at least separate it from previous Italian cannibal films. I might actually remember the Green Inferno just for its aesthetics alone. The gore effects are really good, even though I noticed that there was a lot of manipulation going on. I noticed that a lot of filmmakers like to have one incredibly graphic scene early on. And even though this isn't the first kill, because the plot is these kids are protesting this logging company in the Amazon. On the way back, their plane crashes, and there's some gore when the cannibals initially attack, but it's standard stuff. But once they're captured and the cannibals start doing horrible things, the first major death there is incredibly horrific. Excellent effects. I think most of them are practical. And it will definitely, nauseate you. However, the film never really tops that. In fact, the rest of the movie is kind of tame in comparison. And I think filmmakers do that in order to trick the audience into thinking that the movie is gorier than it actually is, because we're always thinking about that first scene, while at the same time, it makes it easier for them to secure an R rating, because, most R films can get away with one NC-17 worthy moment. But still, that aspect was very well done. If you're a gore hound, you probably should see this movie, whether it's in theater, whether you should see it in theaters or on the small screen is up to you. But it definitely did satisfy in that area. But I almost immediately have to get into the flaws now, because for one, and this is a weird thing that I'm surprised I'm complaining about, the lack of castration. I kept expecting there to be genital mutilation, because all of these films have it in some capacity. But strangely, the Green Inferno copped out. It kept teasing that it might happen, but then it never does. And I kept thinking there's one character I'm expecting to get castrated, and it just sort of robbed me of that. And my whole point here is that the Green Inferno is not as gory as the films that it's paying tribute to. In fact, Eli Roth is holding back. Now, whether there is a certain amount of psychology at play here, because believe it or not, Hostel was not as graphic as people tend to remember it as. In fact, most of the film is very, it's left to your imagination. And maybe that's kind of what Eli Roth is going for, even though it shows so much in other areas that it doesn't work in my eyes. But I found it odd that Eli Roth was playing it safe in the gore department when he's paying tribute to a genre that most certainly did not. At least there's no animal cruelty. And I also will say this. I never felt that the violence was overly sexualized. Like, yeah, there are some moments that you could make the argument for, but when I watch a lot of the films like Cannibal Ferox or Holocaust, Eaten Alive, I do sometimes wonder if the directors are trying to arouse the audience on some level. It just seems too sleazy for me to accept otherwise, which makes me uncomfortable because most of the nudity in these films are in a rape context. But here, like even when women are getting, their clothes ripped off or whatever, I never felt like I was supposed to be turned on. The scenes are always shown to be uncomfortable and humiliating. So I got to give credit to Eli Roth for that. That's one thing he did surprisingly well that I never thought he would have been able to do. Unfortunately, now we have to get into the Eli Roth flaws. Horrible character writing. These characters suck. They're annoying, they're unlikable, they're stupid. There's this one scene that just gets to me where the cannibals first attack and they're looking for this GPS that could save them, and then amidst this onslaught, a character sees the GPS, and what does he do? Does he grab it and hide it real quick like a normal person would? Does he try to hide? No, he goes, "Hey guys, look, it's the GPS," and then he gets knocked out thanks to a poison dart. Nobody's going to be that dumb. It's in grabbing distance. Don't just say you found it. I hate that kind of writing. But the characters are constantly doing stupid things. They're constantly saying something tasteless that just makes you not like them. Now, you could make like with Hostel. Hostel gets a lot of crap for its character writing. But at least there was a certain amount of depth to these characters. Like, yeah, you'll have the sleazy party guy who's very annoying, but he also, feels a lot of guilt in regards to an incident where he let, I believe, a girl drown in his childhood. and that ultimately leads to him developing as a character by the end of the movie. Uh, at least, in other films there was a certain amount of depth to the characters, even though you did not like them. Here, there's nothing. The main girl, very shallow. She's only in this because she has a crush on the guy who's leading it. And at no point did I ever feel she truly developed or changed. Um, God, the other characterizations are so thin that I can't even really describe them. But there's no substance to any of these people. You just don't like them. Everybody has ulterior motives. Now, you could make the argument that this has always been a point in the Italian cannibal genre. Cannibal Holocaust was about supposedly civilized people going into an uncivilized world, but ultimately being far more barbaric than the people they're trying to exploit. But here, you don't get that because the cannibals are not shown to be in a sympathetic light. Cannibal Holocaust made a point of showing that the cannibals only killed these people because they were attacking them. Now, they do say in this movie that the only reason they're doing this is because, the loggers are invading their territory and they think that the victims are the enemies. But you never really see the cannibals in a more positive light to give this any weight. For all you know, that the character was just guessing. Whereas in Cannibal Holocaust, the cannibals, they receive the professor dude and they're very civil towards him, and they tolerate the filmmakers once again up until the filmmakers start, raping them. So there's just no weight to that. These characters are unlikable, but at the same time, for the most part, they're not monstrous, whereas the cannibals are. Now you could make the argument that it's more going the jungle Holocaust route, where these civilized people have to become uncivilized in order to survive. What is the extent of this idea? A girl who's a germaphobe ends up being forced to take a shit in a corner in front of everybody. There's no depth to that. There's no substance there at all. It's actually very lazy and uninspired. And at no point did I feel like these characters were compromising themselves, because they either seem immoral from the beginning or they just don't do anything to really, they don't make any, compromise. There's no dilemma there. So there's that idea is also wasted. But generally, you just don't want to watch these people. You don't want to see them live. You don't want to see them die. They're just unpleasant and very shallow. The acting's not very good either. It's not bad. It's honestly, I think, the worst acting to appear in an Eli Roth movie. I think apparently the main girl is Roth's girlfriend in real life. You might think that immediately means she's going to be the worst. But nah, I didn't think she was that bad compared to the others. The roommate is really the worst actress, in my opinion. What's funny, though, about her is she's the only character with any kind of depth, because she's pretty much the stereotypical bitchy slut, but she also is more insightful and intelligent than everybody else. In fact, she's so smart that she avoids this storyline. She does not go with them, and therefore she lives. I thought that was kind of funny. That's one of the few times I actually enjoyed Eli Roth's writing in this movie. Story, nothing much there. It's actually very conventional. That's one thing that bothers me with Eli Roth, is he can think of interesting ways of hiding how unoriginal his movies are. Like, Hostel has a creative premise, but the formula is a very standard chase film. It's just the idea behind it is the only excuse to get this character in peril. Here, really, this film has the exact same formula as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, where they get trapped in an isolated area, they get captured and harassed and brutalized by the people living there, and then ultimately a sympathetic kid saves the day. Nothing new or special, and the structure of it's very repetitive. So you'll have a character, they'll actually manage to escape, and then there'll be like this lightweight chase scene, and then they'll get captured, put back in the cage, or not necessarily put back in the cage, but and then they'll escape again, and it's like it seems like the process is repeating. I found this movie to be very slow. It takes like 45 minutes to get to where they're captured, and then the rest of the movie is just them waiting to get pulled out of the cage and tortured some more. And that's another issue I have with Italian cannibal films, is that they're generally just people getting tortured or waiting to get tortured, and it just gets old quickly. Once again, Eli Roth sucks with the tone. Every time he starts building momentum, like there are times when, yeah, the Green Inferno is getting under my skin. It is making me nervous and uncomfortable, and I'm kind of chewing my nails. And then somebody will say something funny or do something silly that just ruins the moment. So I just never really knew what to feel. And even sometimes when I think Eli Roth is trying to be profound, it ends up being sort of silly. Like when a character says, "I could smell him. I could smell my friend being cooked." Was that comical or not? But I was like, oh my gosh, that's just a bad line. And then there's the part where the girl is forced to take a dump in front of all of them. It's like they use these over-the-top shitting sound effects, and it's more comical than anything. And is it trying to be funny? There is a way you could do that and actually make it disturbing and awkward. Frozen, which wasn't a great film either. It was a 2010 horror film, not the Disney one. But in that film, a girl is forced to wet herself, and you feel bad for her. The focus is on just how humiliated she is in this situation. You're not paying attention to the fact that she's pissing, and that makes it silly. But here you could hear like just, it's just so over the top, and it's like, goddamn it, it's like an Adam Sandler movie just hijacked this horror film. And it kept doing shit like that throughout the rest of the film. So it just, once again, I never really knew how to feel. I couldn't take it seriously because it was being too goofy, but at the same time, I could never think it was funny because it's too horrific. So yeah, typical Eli Roth problems. Anything else I could say? I don't remember. Oh yeah, there's another stupid part where a character gets the cannibals stoned, and then they get the munchies. And he even says, as they're eating him alive, "Oh no, they have the munchies." Oh god, this is so dumb. The character wasn't unlikable to the point where you wanted to see him get eaten alive. But at that moment, you couldn't feel bad for him because he just said something so stupid. And it was also mostly off screen, by the way, so it's not even a great gore moment. I might be forgetting something. La la la. The ending sucked. I'll talk about that in a moment. But oh yeah, I didn't feel that there was any kind of atmosphere here. With other Italian cannibal flicks, you'll feel the heat, you'll smell the sweat and rot. It's like, once again, you're immersed in this location. But here, you never really feel that way. In fact, I thought Eli Roth was taking care to make sure everything was nice looking as possible, including the women. I noticed their appearances were never compromised. And I hate that when horror films try too hard to make sure the women remain pretty throughout this entire ordeal. Like, even the one who takes the shit, she's supposed to be really sick, but she never really looks that pale or anything. Oh shit, I just lost my train of thought. The chase scenes were very uninspired. It always seemed like the actors were trying too hard to be careful as they moved through this location. I don't blame them, safety first, but I kept thinking that in the editing process, they could have done something to really, jack up the tension, but I thought the chase scenes were very mild. I guess I'll just talk about the ending real quick. Spoiler alert. They don't kill off the one character you want to see killed, and there's a sequel hook. And there wasn't enough material to justify this film, much less a sequel, so why do they need to do that? I don't know. Money, I guess. I don't think they're going to make it, because I don't think this film's going to do very well. But maybe it'll get a direct-to-DVD follow-up, like Hostel 3. But like none of these films have sequels. Well, I think Cannibal Holocaust does, but it's an unofficial sequel, and they don't need them. This film did not need a sequel. I wanted to see that character castrated. Damn it! I wanted to see him castrated, and then they could, plop that penis into their mouths and chew on it, just like they do in the real Italian cannibal movies. I feel weird saying that out loud. But then, you don't know the main girl's motivations because she's such a poorly written character. Did she say that the cannibals actually treated her well and that everybody died in the plane crash because she wanted that guy to die out there? She didn't want a chance that he'd get rescued. That's how I interpreted this scene. Or is she genuinely trying to, is she trying to protect them for noble reasons, even though I'd argue that these people don't really deserve that. But you don't know because it's a bland character. And she's not a good lead character because she's constantly relying on other people to save her, whether it's a guy or a kid. She's not proactive at all. So she's a useless protagonist. But that's all I have to say. I have to actually hurry up because I have to go watch the new Attack on Titan movie. I did not like this, but you might. Just comes down to what you feel about these genres. Read my written review. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook. Yeah, that's all I got. See you later.